Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. As some of you know, one of my hobbies is budget traveling, and I recently got to see two world wonders for about $2,000, and I just wanted to share my trip budget and itinerary with you guys. So to give you guys some context, the two world wonders that we got to see are Chichen Itza in Mexico and Christ the Redeemer in Brazil. Our flights and our hotels were the first things that we booked for this trip, so I'm going to start with those in terms of pricing. Also, if I look down, it's because I have my laptop here. I'm just using it to have the numbers in front of me as I talk. But okay, starting with the flights. The first flight that I needed was from New York City to Mexico. We were okay with flying into either Cancun or Tulum. We were also okay with leaving Friday night or Saturday morning. So we used Skyscanner to see what was cheapest. We entered all of those options and just kind of ran the numbers. Ultimately, we were able to find an early morning flight to Cancun for $138.08 per person. Next, we had to find our flight from Cancun to Rio, and we were a bit flexible on the dates. We were happy to spend an extra day in Mexico or an extra day in Brazil, just depending on how it shook out. And ultimately, we were able to find a flight kind of in the middle of the week for $255.30. Then lastly, we needed our flight from Rio back to New York City, and we actually ended up finding a flight for $266.11, leaving Sunday, arriving Monday morning. And the reason that this flight is so long is because it actually had a 10-hour daytime layover in Sao Paulo, which for us is really great because it meant we got to add an extra city into our itinerary. So overall, it broke out into us spending 4 days in Cancun, 3 days in Rio, and then 1 day in Sao Paulo. So now moving on to hotels. Because Sao Paulo was a layover, we didn't really have to worry about accommodations there. So we just had to worry about the 3 days in Rio and the 4 days in Cancun. Our Cancun hotel, it ended up being $85.21 per person. Again, I was traveling with my boyfriend, so that again is we split it between the two of us, and my portion specifically was the 85.21. Additionally, we stayed in the downtown area. We did not stay in the hotel zone. The hotel zone is known for having like the all-inclusive resorts. Our hotel was definitely not all-inclusive. It was very boutique, but it was a really safe area. It was right next to the Ado bus terminals. There was a supermarket close by. So overall, it was a very convenient, safe, fun location. It was filled with coffee shops and things like that. So it was really fun in the morning to kind of grab breakfast and just be able to walk to the places we needed to go. Now moving on to our accommodations in Brazil, we ended up doing an Airbnb for the 3 nights, and that totaled out to $139.67 per person. Again, this is double it by 2 because it's between me and my boyfriend. In Rio, we stayed in Copacabana. It's not the super bougiest neighborhood you can stay in, but it's also super trendy as well and really safe, has a lot of cafes and breakfast spots, so that was really great. It's very walkable. The nightlife is amazing. So I would highly recommend that you do stay in Copacabana if you're looking for, a budget place to stay. Next, we began to plan our activities. Our first day in Cancun was kind of a city day. We just went to the beach. We went to El Meco archaeological site. So we honestly didn't spend too much money. There was a little bit of Ubering, obviously, between places, but overall, that day ended up being pretty cheap. The next day, we went to Chichen Itza. So we did a Viator experience or a Viator tour, and we went to Chichen Itza archaeological zone. We did a cenote, and then we also did the Koba archaeological site all in 1 day with the same tour company. The third day, we ended up scuba diving, which is really awesome. I am not scuba certified, but I ended up doing what's called a test dive. And it's basically where they take you to a place where you technically could snorkel at this depth, but you scuba dive instead, and you get to see if you like scuba diving before obviously buying a course to get your full certification. Right now, I'm not interested in getting a full certification, but I did want to try scuba diving and getting really close to the Mesoamerican reef, which, by the way, is the second largest reef in the world after Australia, getting really close to the fish and all that good stuff. So it was a really great experience. Then on the 4th day in Mexico, we did Rio Secreto and the Tulum archaeological site. So if you don't know, Rio Secreto is the underwater cave system that connects all of the cenotes or the sinkholes. You're not allowed to take pictures in there, but it's absolutely beautiful. There's so many I'm gonna mess it up, staglatites and staglamites, I think it's what it is. The cave formation is absolutely gorgeous. There's water that you get to kind of walk around in, and obviously it's guided, but it's a very beautiful and very peaceful experience. Then we did a travel day between Cancun and Rio. So to be honest, there wasn't much for us to spend besides like food at the airport. When we finally landed in Rio, we took a city day, so we just got to explore the downtown. Again, this was practically free for the most part. But then on the 2nd day, we went to see Christ the Redeemer. Then on the 4th day, my boyfriend unfortunately got pretty sick, so he ended up staying at the Airbnb. We originally had planned to see the Fingers of God. But instead, to fill the time, I did my hair. If you don't know, Brazil is like notoriously known for all of their beauty treatments, and so I did a progressiva hair treatment, and I feel like my hair came out really great. It's super shiny and slick. So those were our 3 days in Rio. Then we flew over to Sao Paulo, and in Sao Paulo, we kind of just did, again, a city day. We explored Liberdade, which is like their Japanese Brazilian neighborhood. We went to the Afro-Brazilian Museum, and we got to see the cathedral, the Sé Cathedral. So yes, for all of those activities and that packed itinerary that I just mentioned, the total activity cost was $652.47 per person. For all of those days, including the travel days, the food cost us about $404.97 per person. And I definitely will say that Mexico is a lot cheaper than Brazil in my experience. I found that the food was a little bit more expensive. Ubers were a little bit more expensive. I would say like in Mexico, you could probably do a dinner for about $20 per person, as opposed to in Brazil, it was closer to $35. So that brings me to the next category, which is Ubers. While we were there, I ended up spending $179.04 on Ubers. A lot of Ubers that we took were during our city days, obviously getting to and from like different locations. But it also includes our Ubers here in New York City to and from JFK Airport. I think the first Uber to JFK was about $40 per person, and then the Uber back from JFK was about $50 per person. So that's $90 of the budget alone just here in Ubers in New York City. That means for the totality of our trip, we only spent about the other $90. Again, Mexico was cheaper with the Ubers ranging between like honestly about $3 to $5 per Uber, as opposed to in Brazil, I would say they were closer to like $6-8 per ride. Also, the last category, which is super, super important, is tips. And no, I'm not talking about tips at restaurants or at Ubers. I'm specifically talking about tips for your tour guide. And this is only specific to Mexico. Brazil does not really have a tipping culture. Yeah, in Mexico, between those 3 guided experiences, we ended up spending $61.79 tipping our tour guides, which again is super important if you do decide to do one of the guided experiences. And lastly, just for miscellaneous things such as like shopping, buying trinkets, we spent $51.26 each. For me personally, this was probably like I had to buy conditioner while I was there. I purchased Havaianas, the really cool flip-flops in Brazil. We purchased like some knickknacks at Chichen Itza, as well as the Afro-Brazilian Museum. That brings my grand total to $2,259.26. But remember, I just chose to do my hair in Brazil. My boyfriend did not choose to do that, so his grand total is actually $2,071.42. So you can see that we were practically right on the money. I did go a little bit over because of my hair, but I don't regret it. It looks good. But yeah, I just hope that this kind of gives you an idea of what budget travel can look like, especially to very touristy places. Mexico and Brazil, and specifically Cancun and Rio and Sao Paulo are some of the most visited places in Latin America. So, these are definitely going to be more expensive places. If you do visit a place that doesn't have a world wonder, it would be even cheaper, is what I'm saying. I hope this video has inspired you to pick up budget travels, make it a fun challenge, see how cheap you could go, because the more money you save on a specific vacation just means you're able to do more vacations and have more memories that are really important to you. But also to show that I feel like I personally didn't really gimp out on any experiences. I feel like our itinerary was very, very jam-packed and we saw a lot of things without necessarily having to spend a ridiculous amount of money. But yeah, that is everything from me. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.